Hey guys, it's John from the VisiCast. Games Workshop have announced at Adepticon that there are new rules incoming, which basically means we have a new edition of 40k coming. Rumours have been flying around for a little while, so we're going to round up in this video what we know so far and some of the implications that's going to have on the game in the future. Also asking a few questions as to what else we can expect, but we don't know just yet. So rumours have been flying around for quite a long time that the new edition of 40k is incoming, and this announcement at Adepticon pretty much confirms that that is the case. They haven't confirmed exactly when the new edition will be, but the rumours for a while have been that it will be coming in summer, so around about June time, which isn't that far away. So I did a video a little while ago called 8th edition Things We Should Change. It's been linked below. Quite a popular video, but it basically discussed things that they could change to improve for the next edition. Turns out that most of the things in that video have indeed come true and are now confirmed by this Adepticon announcement. So we're going to go through what we know already. Now, in the last video, I had a lot of comparisons to Age of Sigmar. The reason is that's been their latest release for a new game system, and a lot of stuff went well with it. Whilst originally it might have been a bit of a rocky start, it's taken off really well, and I think it's drawing a lot of new people into the game. So we can see that they're taking their learnings from Age of Sigmar and they're applying it to 40k. That's obviously a very, very wise thing to do. So when Age of Sigmar was first released, it wasn't very structured. No units had any points cost. You basically just took whatever the hell you wanted and you put it on the board. And that meant that there was no balance in the games. There was uproar. Other than that, it was a fairly good game system. The core rules were very, very simple, and the depth came from the unit entries, which is coming up in a minute. We will discuss that because that is definitely something that's happening. However, because there was uproar about the fact that you couldn't have a matched play, Games Workshop released something called the General's Handbook. Now, in this book, it gave several ways to play the game. You could either do sort of narrative missions, you could just have turn up and play style missions where you literally brought whatever you want. One person could bring 1,000 models, one person could bring 5, which I don't think is a good way of playing. I'm not sure that many people actually do play that. And then finally, they brought up a thing called matched play. They also had rules in there for actual competition, so that there was a competition style format within the actual rulebook, which is quite cool that Games Workshop is doing that, because at present, if you look at 40k at least, you have things like the ITC trying to change the format for competitions to try and level the playing field a tiny, tiny bit. Games Workshop have confirmed that they will be bringing out all these styles of play to 40k. So you'll have turn up and play, you'll have narrative style missions, and you'll have match play. So it's good that we know we're getting match play off the bat, which means points cost will still be in effect, which is brilliant because that's where they really messed up on Age of Sigmar. One new thing that is quite interesting, this isn't in Age of Sigmar to my knowledge, although you could say it kind of is with formations, but formations do exist in 40k. So one of the new things that we will be seeing is army selection and playing more fluffy lists, giving you a bit of a bonus. The way you're going to get a bonus is through command points. So if you take armies that mirror that in the book, I imagine this is going to be formations. How it will work exactly, they haven't confirmed. If you take those sorts of armies, you get command points, which will allow you to do things like re-roll dice. It could also allow you to, this is speculation, I don't know this, but we're still in early days, could maybe allow you to re-pull out tactical cards or something like that, or grant army-wide bonuses. I don't know at present, but that's one of the things that isn't in Age of Sigmar that is coming to 40k. This is where we start getting into information which confirms other things which hasn't been directly confirmed, if that makes sense. So movement characteristics are back. That's massive. If you look at Age of Sigmar, every single character or unit entry in Age of Sigmar has a war scroll. I'll show you what a war scroll looks like. Now, war scrolls haven't been properly confirmed by Games Workshop as definitely coming. However, everything points to the fact that they are coming. And whether they're in the exact same format as Age of Sigmar and Warhammer right now, I don't know. But this pretty much confirms movement characteristics. Every unit will have their own movement characteristics. And the way that Games Workshop have worded it on the Warhammer community website is that you don't need to learn basic unit types. You don't need to learn how far bikes move, how far infantry, jetpacks, all that stuff. You just have it all there on your unit entry, and it could be different for every unit. So for example, maybe a White Scars bike would move faster than a Ravenwing bike by an inch for whatever reason, I don't know. But that would be specific to the unit entry. This definitely points to the fact that we're getting war scrolls, because just by doing that, every single entry you have in your codex doesn't have a movement characteristic with it at present. So they have to release new unit entries for every single unit in the game to allow for that to be in their unit profile. Now they did this for Age of Sigmar. When Age of Sigmar came out, everything straight off the bat had a new unit profile. Those profiles were available online. They are currently available online. If you go onto the Games Workshop website, you can get any unit entry for free. You don't need to buy a codex for it. It's just on the website alongside where you can buy that model. That's a really good thing because it means to play the game, you don't actually need to buy a codex. You can, I mean, the rules for Age of Sigmar are free online. I imagine they would do the same for 40k because they get more, Games Workshop gets more value from putting in new players and having a larger player base who buy more models than it does from getting their limited player base buying more books. So I am part of a few groups, WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups and all this stuff where people discuss what's going on in 40k, and already there has been a lot of uproar in terms of I can't believe all these codexes I bought are just going to be invalid. I mean, that is the case. However, you won't have to buy a new codex for every army because hopefully if they do it the same way as Age of Sigmar, which I imagine they almost definitely will do, you will be able to use all your models and get the rules for them straight off the bat as soon as the next edition of 40k is out, which in my opinion is a very, very good thing. This is one thing I said in the last video. Again, if you haven't watched it, it's probably worth a quick watch. Armor modifiers. So at present in 40k, what happens is if you have a 3+ save and your weapon has an AP3 value, the save just disappears. It's gone. However, what they're saying they will do is exactly the same as in Age of Sigmar again. They're going to apply modifiers. So instead of, for example, a rending weapon getting rid of your save completely, it might just minus your armor value by 1. So what this means, and this is really big, just from this little thing, Marines are going to get tougher. So things like Marines or Terminators, which have been out of the meta for a long time, at least in the competitive scene, will come back because the reason that Marines and Terminators specifically are supposed to be quite strong is because they have really high armor values. However, in the current meta, there's been sort of an arms race whereby everything is compared to Marines and therefore everything is getting 3+ AP3 weapons. Or AP2 weapons, which is why you see less and less and less Terminators, because they die so easy for the amount of points you have to put in. However, by adding armor rending values, it means that a Terminator with a 2+ save, that will go down to a 3+ save instead of being negated entirely. And that's big because it adds to the resiliency of Marines, which means you'll see a lot more Marines and Marines will become a bit more powerful. Now this is part of a wider discussion, so if you look at the meta and who's won a lot of tournaments recently, there's an article I read not that long ago, which you'll be seeing right now, which basically had a breakdown of the top armies for the tournament scene in 2016-17, and Eldar are by far and away up the top, and then you have Tau up there as well. You do have some Space Marines up there, and the reason you have those Space Marines is there are a few formations. These won't be generic Space Marine armies. There are some formations which allow you to take free stuff, which basically means instead of, if you're playing an 1850 point game and you get all your transports free, you're essentially playing like a 2,200 point game against 1850, which is why they can do well. The individual units don't compare as well, however, because you have more of them, you have more value, so that's why Space Marines can do all right at present because of a few formations. Just because of this change, just because of that armor modifier instead of armor elimination, it means that the meta is going to shift massively. Eldar won't be as powerful. Tau probably won't be as powerful, you don't know. Tau tends to work on weight of fire, so maybe they won't be as affected as much, but definitely Eldar will be affected, which should hopefully do a good job at balancing the game a little bit. It's impossible to completely balance a game. There'll always be things that are better than others. It's the same in every game system across everything, but to level the playing field a little bit more is huge, and it's a really positive thing in my opinion. Fingers crossed this simple change will help do that. This is also quite big, and at present they haven't given too much information, but at present similar to Age of Sigmar. Again, it's obvious they're taking a lot of what they learned in Age of Sigmar and applying it to 40k. Now I've been playing since 5th edition, and this is the biggest change I've seen since 5th edition. Some of these changes are massive. Since 5th, when there have been changes, they seem to be minor little tweaks. Nothing major, just little things like vehicles have hull points and this sort of thing. They do have a bit of an impact on the meta, but they're not massive. But the changes we're seeing here are changes to unit profiles, things like that, like adding movement values, rending values. I haven't seen that in 40k yet. I understand that was a thing back in the early days, but I'm not that much of a veteran. But yeah, the combat phase, what they're saying is if a unit charges in, they get to strike first, which is big. So previously, it was just based on your initiative value. So if, for example, a Space Marine did charge an Eldar unit, the Eldar unit would go first because they have a higher initiative. Now, if the Space Marine unit charges, they get to strike first. Now, they haven't confirmed exactly what's going to happen with initiative, but if you look at Age of Sigmar, there is no initiative value. There is no you always strike first. It's a case of you pick which combats go in which order. So I could charge in and say, right, it's my turn, I'm hitting first with this unit and that unit hits first, and then your opponent gets to pick which combat they want to resolve and they only do their side. So they could realise that the combat you just picked they've lost, but they could want to win another combat and therefore strike first over there. That adds a bit more of a tactical advantage to combat and makes it more fair. Someone with a higher initiative isn't always going to be striking first in every combat. They could strike second in some combats. It's not confirmed that's exactly how it will work, but that is how Age of Sigmar works. So looking at the fact that they're doing a lot of the stuff that they did with Age of Sigmar in 40k now, it is very possible that this could be how it works. And morale, this is again Age of Sigmar-ish. They have said that morale, instead of taking a leadership test, falling back or getting sweeping advanced, you take a leadership test and you roll a d6 in your leadership with a modifier based on how many units you've lost. I can't remember exactly how it works, I'll put it on the screen. However, you just take an amount of additional casualties to the amount you roll over. So instead of you running away from the combat, you just take additional casualties, which will help resolve combats a little bit quicker. If someone's on the upper hand, they'll start steamrolling other people. Again, interesting. I don't know how this is going to change things. It will make combat a more effective way of killing things. This edition has been more focused towards shooting being very, very powerful, because obviously you shoot, you don't get hit back. However, it doesn't mean that anything with close combat isn't still badass. It can be, but combat does tend to be a bit of a sludge, and it takes a few turns to get going or get resolved, or sometimes can just last like 4 or 5 turns where you're just stuck in a combat trying to deal with something with no one really doing any damage to each other. So to add this in does mean that combat will probably be a lot more effective at killing stuff. If you are good in combat and you put a close combat unit against the unit and it starts steamrolling stuff, it can just plow through it. Which is interesting again. Don't know what your take on that is, but if you do have an opinion, if you have an opinion on any of this stuff, I'd be interested to hear it. So they're the main things that came out of the Adepticon announcement, and the other things we know for definite at present. There are a few more things that we can collect from elsewhere on the internet. So current rumours flying around are that 8th edition will be out in summer, and the most likely time for that to be released is in June, which isn't that far away. And Games Workshop doesn't tend to do an announcement and then wait 6 months, a year. It tends to be quite punchy. So considering it's a new edition, you'd expect there to be a slightly longer lead time than a codex being announced or a new army and it coming out a week later. But I doubt they're going to leave it that long. So June does seem like a fairly accurate date for the new edition to come out. So another thing, 30k is becoming a bigger and bigger game. At present, it's very expensive, and all the books are from Forge World. However, the new edition is going to be bringing 30k into the mainstream, into the core rulebook, which means, or supposedly it is, which means that we're going to have 40k and 30k available to play and more freely accessible, which is a really, really good thing because a lot of people have a lot of interest in 30k to make it more accessible. And it appears that they're releasing more and more models in plastic and not just Forge World, which again will make it more accessible, mean more people can play it, and a lot of people do seem to want to play that game. In fact, there's an article on Bell of Lost Souls which I looked at, and you can probably see it in the background, whilst sort of looking up things for this video, and it has a really interesting little bit at the bottom whereby it says that the way that it's going to work, or could work, is that Games Workshop has a 3-tiered system. You have Age of Sigmar, which is for like starters, it's quite basic, or the core rule set is quite basic. Then you have 40k, which is sort of an intermediate level skill game, and then you have Horus Heresy, which is more advanced. I don't know if that's, I haven't really played enough Age of Sigmar or any real Horus Heresy to see if that is the case. It's my understanding that Horus Heresy is a little bit more straightforward just because everything's a Marine pretty much. So you're facing, you know what you're facing against. I don't know how that works. Your opinions on that are greatly appreciated. So if you guys want to comment below, that'd be fantastic. That is it so far. That's what we know so far. If you guys know anything else, put it in and then I can do another video and we can keep each other updated on this thing. I do want to keep reporting on this as more and more information comes to light, and obviously when the new edition does come out, I'll do a video and we'll review that in great depth and analysis. We recently did an analysis video for the Gathering Storm 3 book. If you haven't seen that, please go watch it. Also, we do a lot of battle reports, really high quality battle reports in my opinion. They take a long time for me to make. So if you want to check those out, it would be greatly appreciated. I'd say check out some of the newer ones because we have perfected the format over time, but some of the early ones are quite popular. So if you can check those out, it'd be fantastic. And we have like comedy short videos such as Ultimate Cheese, Eldar Race Night. If you haven't seen that, I highly recommend it. Or The Worst 40k Player, which is also quite funny in my supremely biased opinion. Also, we're sponsored by War Games. Check them out, they are linked below. If you can like, comment, subscribe, that's massive. It means a lot to me. And it helps grow the channel, which is fantastic. And finally, we have a Patreon page that is linked below. If you don't know what Patreon is, basically you can give a little bit of money if you do like these videos and you are a regular watcher, and that's greatly appreciated. Additionally, little thing, we have coming up some VisiCast exclusive products, and they'll be available via the XLC, which basically it's a guy who does printed scenery and cool little quirky things like that. But we'll have VisiCast specific products which will be available, and I'll start linking those soon, so get excited for that because they are really cool. And that's another way you can help support the channel and actually get something for your board, which is really cool. But cheers guys, I really appreciate you watching this. Leave your comments in the section below, like, subscribe, all that stuff. Thank you for watching.